Hey everybody. I wanted to comment on the state of the education system. Um, I actually started to make a video the other day, Monday, on my drive home from having my car inspected, but the phone kept falling over on my dashboard. Um, Any case, um, this is in response to a couple videos that I saw. Um, One person, I rewatched her videos um, for a second or third time, and another person is actually a teacher, I believe, somewhere in California. Um, Both of these women are roughly around the same age, in their mid 30s. So your educational experiences were a lot different than mine because I'm a good 20 years older. I started school I started public school, had to be probably 1970 or 71. I did go to nursery school. I don't know why my parents sent me to nursery school because it's not required. So now they have preschool, so I guess the nursery school is similar. My mom wasn't working, my father worked. Okay, so this is at a time when a lot of women were, they were stay-at-home moms, to stay at home, take care of the kids in the house. So again, it was only like for maybe half a day. Kindergarten was only half a day, and this was in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. When I started kindergarten, uh, they had half days. For part of the year, we went to school in the morning and left early, and then for the other half of the year, we came in later and left when the school closed at 3 o'clock, when all the classes closed. So, that was when it started for me. Um, I am very disappointed in the state of the education system in this country, um, for a lot of different reasons. One, I'm not impressed with the quality of the students that are being turned out. And I'm talking about just for basic life skills. I'm talking about reading, arithmetic. History's a really big one, civics. Um, and I'm very much disappointed in that. And again, I can only comment on the public school education system because that's my experience. I never went to a private school for grade school. Um, in any event, I remember when I was in elementary school, first, second, third grade, and they would give us assemblies, or we would go to assemblies, and they would discuss things like what to do if you're approached by a stranger. Don't get into strangers' cars. And then they would give you coloring topics to work on, with crayons. And it used to be a guy dressed holding a bag of money with with a Lone Ranger mask, and he had a cap and a black and white striped, shirt. So he looked, like a felon, the typical cartoon style. We were taught not to fear police. Um, we were taught that the police were good. And you have to remember, this is in the city of Philadelphia. So these were, the big city police. Um, so we had all these things that people in school aren't getting now. Um, Now they want to defund the police. When I was in school, God, they wouldn't even have thought of that. Um, Something else about my education, and through no fault of anybody, just the way things are, the city of Philadelphia, and I guess a lot of other, major cities, are broken up into distinct neighborhoods. And the neighborhood we lived in, or the area, the section was in Northeast Philadelphia, was Morrell Park. And it was probably 98% white. And it was probably 98 or 99% Catholic or Christian. When I went to elementary school, I only remember one other black student. And I think he was in my first grade class, but for some reason he didn't stay in that class. I think he went to another class. But the only other black people I had in my elementary school in Philadelphia, and it was John Hancock Elementary School in the Northeast, was my second grade teacher was black. In second grade, we went to another classroom for science class. That teacher was black, and the school art teacher was black. And I remember she was a dark-skinned black woman. I also remember she was very pretty, but I don't remember exactly what she looked like. I just remember she was dark-skinned. But I do remember thinking how pretty she was. My second grade teacher, Mrs. Jordan, she was so light-skinned that people thought she was white. But either way, it didn't matter to me. I mean, she sometimes would have her daughter come in. At her time, her daughter was a teenager. And Mrs. Jordan was from Pensacola, New Jersey, so she would just travel over the bridge to come to work. But her daughter was black, so in either case, that was just my experience with black people in school. Now, when my parents sold the house and we moved to New Jersey, that school was more mixed with different types of people. Okay, so it was probably 1/3 to 1/2 black. And it didn't make a difference to me either way what the other students in the class looked like. So race was not an issue. I don't remember any teachers making an issue of it either. I was only in school, that school system in New Jersey, in Winslow Township, for like 2.25 years. So it finished out 4th grade, all of 5th grade, and most of 6th grade before my parents separated. And I went with my mom and my sister down south. So in that time frame, I had 2 women teachers and 1 man. And the man was Mr. Smith. I do remember, I liked him a lot. I thought he was pretty cool. His brother, too, was actually a professional soccer player. And you got to remember, this is, the mid to late 70s, and I don't remember soccer being a really big sport here like it is now. So I don't know where his brother played, but in any case, just one interesting tidbit. But through my education, I don't ever feel that we were being preached to, that we were being taught something negative about the U.S. I just don't remember it. I don't know if I got lucky. I don't know if maybe that was just the state of the education system then, where it wasn't infiltrated by people with Marxist and socialist beliefs. I just don't get the impression that the teachers I had at the time were like that. I don't recall having any books that, textbooks I mean, that portrayed America in a negative view. I don't remember the extent of the history lessons, but I just don't have any negative experiences or experiences with negativity about America's founding. and our history. Um, the other thing is, then I went to school, when my parents separated, I went to school in Chesapeake, Virginia to finish out 6th grade. I hated that school. Thank God. I was only there for like maybe 2 months. I couldn't stand it. Um, again, I don't remember how, and again, you got to remember this is southeastern Virginia, so it's the South, but southeastern Virginia was heavily populated because of the Norfolk Naval Base and Oceana Naval Air Station. So that's a heavily populated area with people from all over the country just because of the military. So we're not talking about a lot of Southern Hicks, but in any case, I didn't like that school. I was never a good student, and it wasn't because I was stupid. It was because I didn't apply myself and I was lazy. I didn't like school. And what happened was when we moved down to the school, my sister and I went down to the school in Chesapeake. They put us in the advanced classes because due to my laziness, I was in remedial classes for math and English. Reading, I was always at grade level or above. But for English and math, I was always behind. And again, due to my laziness. But we got down there and, I'm in 6th grade and I could see how backward it was with the education system because we were put into the advanced class. My sister was always better at those subjects than I was, so I could see her being in advanced classes for it. But in any event, still there when I came to start 7th grade, and my mother and my sister and I, we moved to an apartment in Arrowhead section of Kempsville, which is a borough of Virginia Beach, Virginia. And I ended up going to Kemp's Landing Elementary School. That school's no longer there. They turned the building into high-end condominiums. But in any case, 7th grade for a lot of students is the beginning of middle school. For me, it was still elementary school. Kemp's Landing was just for 6th and 7th grade. And so my sister and I were both there at the same time. And I had one teacher for each subject, so we would rotate out of the class, and it seemed like everybody was going in a clockwise motion. We'd start off in our homeroom and have English, then we would go to our math class and our social studies and all that stuff. So it was kind of like prep for changing classrooms in middle school and high school. But again, even there, I don't recall teachers trying to influence with negativity regarding the founding of the U.S. I just never had that experience. Come 8th grade, I moved back up with my father to New Jersey, and I ended up going to school in Civil, New Jersey, which is Washington Township High School. And there, same thing. I remember my 8th grade social studies teacher, Mr. Fizemeyer. He's still in education because I did look him up maybe a year or so ago. I don't think he's a teacher, but I think he's in some type of higher end position in Atlantic County. I live in Gloucester County. But in any event, I just never had the experience of people putting the United States down. And 8th grade was kind of interesting. That was when the Iran hostage situation took place. So that was my 8th grade social studies. We were discussing that type of situation. I remember how There were bumper stickers on cars with pictures of Mickey Mouse with his middle finger up saying, "Hey, Iran." So, you know, it was a lot of patriotism regarding that, okay, situation. People were pulling for getting hostages released. Nobody was blaming the United States. Well, at least that I know, because, you know, I didn't watch the news or anything, but I don't recall teachers or anything blaming the United States for, you know, our hostages being taken and saying that we deserved it, which is what people would say now. And in any event, you know, that was the world, what was going on in the world at the time. If you hear any noise in the background, it's thunder. We're about to have a storm. But in any case, it just one of those little tidbits. And then, you know, I was still there when I started high school. High school class for history was, they had History 1 and History 2. And I was in History 1 in 10th grade. History 2 would have been 11th grade. I don't remember what they got in 12th grade, because by the end of 10th grade I moved again back down south, and I finished up in the same school system that that I was in when I went to 7th grade, and this time I went to, you know, Kempsville High School. And if you look up these high schools, there's a website you can look them up, because they I guess grade them or rank them. And Kempsville High School was a really good school, okay? It really was. I mean, again, I was still a poor student, but even I knew that I was benefiting from a better school. Washington Township, some of the teachers were okay. Some of them were half-assed. I did have one half-assed teacher in Kempsville. But, you know, you get what you get. Anyway, these were my experiences. The only problem I suffered as far as history goes is because the school I was attending in New Jersey divided up American history into 2 separate school years, and the school in Virginia I went to had it in 1 school year. I missed everything from like 1804 up through World War I. Okay, I had to cram for that for my final exam. What I think was the deal was they gave you an intermix of government and history here in New Jersey, whereas in Virginia, and this is the only way I can explain it, whereas in Virginia it was a separate government class. Okay, so they just gave you the history in 1 year, and they gave you the government in your senior year. Your 10th grade year, you had the choice of world geography or world history. I took world history because history interests me. American history, world history, whatever the case is. Again, my history teachers were open to discussion. No teacher that I can ever recall scolded a student for having an opinion. Period. Whether they agreed or disagreed, I don't know, because the student was entitled to have an opinion. I mean, what is school for if you can't go to school and express yourself and have an open dialogue, okay? And, you know, use critical thinking. So, critical thinking was actually something I was not very good at. I increased my skill a little bit in grad school, but critical thinking wasn't a requirement for my undergrad programs. But in any event, it's just the state of what some of these people are saying about how they were treated in school, what they were being taught, how some teachers can't express their political views because they're conservative, whereas the liberals, they can shout it from the rooftops and suffer no negative consequences. But the moment you have an opposing view or you're conservative, you're a demon. You're automatically demonized. You're ostracized. Whatever the case is, and this is inappropriate. I could tell you that if I were a teacher and a student had an opinion that I didn't agree with, for instance, maybe they had a socialist view, I would not scold the student, but I would point out how my views might be better or are better than theirs. That's just for an example. That's what I would do. I would hate to think that a school system is actively promoting this type of education. I don't have kids. So the taxes I pay go towards the public school in my town, but I don't have kids. I don't know what the students are receiving as far as education in school. In my area these days, I don't know what they're receiving in Virginia Beach anymore. I would hate to think that it's gone along the way of what these other YouTubers that I had viewed their channels, again, both of them women in their mid-30s, early 30s, saying what their experiences were. And I'm sorry you had those experiences. I'm glad that you discovered different truths, and I hope that you both continue to keep educating yourself. But I can't believe the nature of education. Come to college, when I was an undergrad, I was doing an internship in probation and parole. And I was talking to a friend of mine or somebody, and then somebody else came along, or he introduced me to him, and they mentioned I was doing my internship in probation and parole, and the guy said, "Oh, they should release them all." And I'm like, big liberal. And I'm like, some of these people really do belong in jail for whatever reason because they're just not redeemable. And I said that in so many words. I said, some of these people really do belong in jail. I'm all for giving people a second chance, and that was my interest in probation and parole. But, the person you release on probation and or parole, they have to want to change themselves. They have to want to get out of where they were and successfully complete a program and not reoffend. Okay? And that's the big challenge for that particular career field. But in any event, I graduated with my bachelor's in 1992 because I went to college later than other people. I went to community college. I was out a couple years, and then I went back for my degree. So, everybody that I went to high school with who went straight to college for 4 years, they all graduated in 1988. I graduated 4 years later in 1992. In any event, I was out of school for 20 years before I went back for a master's degree. And the only reason I went for this one particular master's degree was because I've always wanted to attend University of Pennsylvania, and I had the opportunity to do it because the program I was going to take, I could get accepted easily, and or I did get accepted easily, and it was within walking distance of where I was working. And I said, I'm going to do this. So basically, me going to school there for a liberal arts degree, master's in liberal arts, was a bucket list item. Okay, I didn't need the degree for work. I did it because I wanted to. It was a bucket list item. I didn't have the grades in public school to go to school there, so I went for graduate school. Um, this is where I started to see, and by this time I was really into conservative viewpoints. Um, but, and I was a registered independent at the time. And I had not voted Democrat since, um, God, since John Kerry was running for president against Bush. So, the Obama election was going on at the time. I remember being in this one class, and it was a 400 level class on the rise and fall of Nazi Germany. And it was a mixture of people who were undergraduates and maybe some graduates. It was a 400 level class. I wasn't allowed to take any classes that were in the below 300 level, I think, is what the deal was. So I was taking this because it interested me. And I remember all these students walking around with big smiles on their faces with these stickers that says, "I voted." And all I could think was that, yeah, I bet you've all voted for Obama just because he's black. Seriously, if I don't care if you're black, white, whatever the case is, if you voted based on that man's skin color, that makes you a racist. I didn't vote for him based on his skin color. I didn't vote for him because I didn't like his policies and I didn't like the job he did. Okay? His skin color wasn't even a thought in my mind. But if you voted for him, thought that, oh, we gotta have the world's first black president of the United States, and this is a history-making thing, and if you voted for him strictly because the man is black and not give a hoot about his policies, you're the racist, not me. But, that was then. Through some classes, I ran into some liberal, certainly liberal students and liberal teachers, but I don't recall, and this is not that long ago, okay? This is in the 2000s. I don't recall anyone ostracizing me for beliefs, but I didn't openly discuss them because I didn't feel they were pertinent to maybe whatever we were discussing in class. So I didn't bring or mention politics in a class where it wasn't warranted. Okay. And I don't recall if any other students really did. There was one class I took, and a student did bring up something about Obama not doing something in relation to the Russians going into the Ukraine. But I think that maybe that was the extent of it. But I just didn't have a lot of people I just didn't have these experiences that these other people are having, so I can't fathom it. I hear and I read a lot of stuff about it, and that these teachers are like this, and I can't think the school board allows this in these districts. I just can't, I can't see it. I mean, I just can't believe it. But I think, rather than defund the police, I think that we need to defund and disband the Department of Education. Okay? we need to give education back to the states, and it's their responsibility. States need to stop relying on the federal government for all their problems. First, they need to be more physically responsible. A couple of years ago, Governor Murphy raised the gas tax 21 cents because of a shortfall in the state pension. You mean you bastards can't manage the state funds enough that you've got to take money out of our pockets through a gas tax, okay, just so you bastards can retire? I mean, it's shit like that. So, I, these videos, they're not scripted, they're off the cuff. Okay, so please apologize for the pauses and the breaks, and I don't edit the videos. Okay, so 30 minutes into this, fair warning, but this is unacceptable by teachers unions. We now have teachers unions who are fighting to stay at home for the coming school year due to COVID-19 because they don't want to go back in the classroom. And they fail to, number one, realize this really has a negative effect on the student. Students need to interact. They need to socialize, for good or for bad. They do. I was picked on at school. I admit it. But they need to socialize with other students, people their own age. Yeah, I was bullied in school. Through all the schools I went to, I was bullied. But students need to socialize. They need that interaction with people their own age. And there's something just positive about a classroom environment. The other thing that these teachers unions fail to realize is that maybe parents can't stay home with the kids. The parents have to go back to work. They can't leave a 6, 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old home to study alone on the computer. Okay? So I feel that this is really selfish of the teachers unions. Another thing is something disturbing, and one thing about being taught home alone is the teacher won't know who else is in the room. And I saw this on a Michael Knowles podcast snippet. And I don't know where the teacher was from, but the teacher was concerned because he couldn't, basically, in a nutshell, the teacher was concerned because he wouldn't be able to effectively indoctrinate the children because he didn't know who else was in the classroom or the virtual classroom, who else would be in the room with the child. And this is a major issue. Now, these two women that I saw in their videos, one said that she gets involved with her kids. Great. You should. My mother was an educator. She went to college for education. When I was a child, she was a substitute teacher in West Philadelphia. It didn't last very long due to an incident that happened in the school where it nearly cost her her life. So she stopped doing that, and she didn't go back to education until my parents were divorced. And when she did, she was teaching in a private junior college. But this is not acceptable. The government took over student loans. So now, when you want to go to college and you apply for a student loan, you fill out a FAFSA form. It goes to the Department of Education. You get your loan. It's now granted by the government. When I went and got my undergraduate degree, I applied for a student loan, but I went to my bank and did it. When I went to grad school, I had to do the FAFSA. With the government being able to control what students learn is not appropriate. Okay, this should be something that's left up to the local and the state. Okay, that's why we have school boards. The federal government should not be involved. It's not the federal government's responsibility to ensure that people go to college. It's not the federal government's responsibility to pay for people to go to college. It's not the federal government's responsibility to ensure people get an education. That is a local decision. This stuff needs to go back to the states, in my opinion. And it won't be easy because the federal government is so ingrained in it. Now, backtracking again to when I was in school, I got done at Penn. I had an interest in continuing my education. I got another degree in government. And one of the students in the class was, and it was an online class, okay, so I never personally met any of these people, okay? But one of the students was local. She was a teacher in a poor school district outside of Philadelphia. I don't remember which one. And this happened to be like right after Trump was elected. So he was president-elect. He wasn't even sworn into office yet. And already she was raised in a fit because of who he nominated to the Department of Education. And she feared because she was already in a poor school district and they relied on the federal government for money. Now, I'm sorry that the school district is poor, okay? It seems to me that that's a function of the people in the surrounding area and the tax situation, or how the county or the town spends their tax money. She was afraid that federal funds would be cut off from the school. It's not the frickin' federal government's responsibility. I just don't see that. This is money that the government is wasting, okay? And now they're wasting it at our expense to indoctrinate kids into Marxist socialist views. And that is completely irresponsible. So I don't know now exactly what's being done, but I think that we need to have a push for giving the states the responsibility for the education system in their respective states. Okay, get rid of the Department of Education. Parents, take a more active role in what your kids are learning, especially the parents who realize what they're teaching is crap. I don't care if a teacher's Marxist or socialist, but they shouldn't be presenting their views. They should allow the student to make up their own mind. Whether they, for right or for wrong, they need to teach the correct history, not a made-up history. So I rambled enough. I think I'm just going to cut it off here. So again, I'm sorry. I usually want to cut these down to like 10 minutes, and it just doesn't happen. But I can't. Like I said, I don't. I just get on. I give you my opinion, and I don't. I don't edit these videos. And again, it's not scripted. So I apologize. Hopefully you'll make it through to the rest of the video. But if you have any thoughts on the subject, please leave them below. Thank you. Take care.